And we are live, back on the air from DogCon and from New Zealand. Thank you so much for joining us. We have the author duo of Lee Murray and Dan Rabarts. And please tell us something about yourselves and about your projects.
Right. Oh, okay. I'll kick off. So this particular book is probably the third collaboration that Lee and I have worked on together. We did a couple of anthologies before that, and this was sort of the end result of that. We decided we wanted to do something a little bit more substantial, and so we thought we would sit down and write a short novella together. And that short novella turned out to be a little bit more than a short novella, and we've ended up with a book that has two distinct voices in it, two distinct characters, and a very New Zealand feel, and something that we're pretty happy about at the moment.
Yeah. And when Jennifer asked me about it, when we pitched it at DogCon, and the voices that we was in, I kind of said that was this Maori bad boy kind of guy, and this Chinese scientist sort, and essentially that probably is us. we may have drawn on some real life threads there
to help smooth the way.
We're very involved in the New Zealand spec-fic community here, and we mostly write dark fiction, fantasy, and science fiction things. Horror, obviously, it's a very small horror community.
Extremely small.
We might be most of it. No, that's not quite true.
You can put the small room in
your exactly.
You
have done.
we probably have done. But yeah, so our anthology projects prior to this, the first one was a horror anthology, flash fiction, which was called Baby Teeth. It was a little project that came out sort of out of nothing. I said something on Facebook about here's all these creepy things that kids say. Why don't we all take something from that and go away and just write something for fun? And that turned into an anthology that went on to raise money for a children's literacy charity. We ended up making about $2,000 for that, and it also won a couple of awards. And the other anthology that we did, which has just recently been released, was called At the Edge, and it was short fiction, dark fiction, and so we got submissions from across the world in Australia, and it was fairly dark as well. But that's science fiction as well as fantasy, as well as horror.
Yeah, and actually, it had its Australian release 2 hours ago.
Yes.
And at Conflux, hello you. This is Annabelle. Dan.
Hello.
Hello, you're talking to America.
So hello, America.
Hello. Hey, thank you.
Yeah, so they're currently having I think they had pavlova, and it was a fight about whether pavlova was a New Zealand dessert or an Australian dessert. But that launch has just happened, so we're quite excited to hear the results of that and have some readings. And yeah, so it was really intended to be a networking opportunity between New Zealand dark fiction writers and Australian dark fiction writers. And Dan had previously been to, which conference did you go to?
So I went to Continuum 10 in Melbourne in 2014, must be 2014. So I went over there as part of a fan fund initiative, and basically spent 3 days hanging out with people, working with the Australian community, and talking about New Zealand writing, and talking about New Zealand writers, and meeting all the Australian writers that I liked, and came away from that with lots of ideas about how we can continue to build those bridges, particularly with Australia, because Australia has a really strong fan base for the fiction. They've got a lot of very strong small presses and very, very loyal readership, and some extremely talented writers as well, who are doing things in Australia as well as international market.
Yeah, so that was actually really a really good move from our point of view, because it really did help to bring the New Zealand and Australian communities together. Obviously.
That's right. That's work that is continuing on to
Hello again. Hello again.
Yes.
All right. Oh, Yoda. Yes.
Oh, yes, it's Yoda.
Yes.
Yoda's good.
He's gone.
Okay.
Could have raised him right, from the start.
The two boys are upstairs playing Minecraft, so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably what mine is doing right now himself. So, yeah.
It's all one big family.
Well, that's I'm really interested in the community building aspect that you have there. Of course, community is really important to us on this end as well. Hello again. Speaking of building community, we have a new member. But okay, great. So, yeah, we're really happy to be working with you, welcoming you to the publishing family that we have here. And I'm just curious about maybe bridge building and community building between the United States and New Zealand. Is that something that you see happening at all, or is that a possibility?
That's right. That's the next step, isn't it? So, baby steps. We've got the Tasman first, and the Pacific after that.
Okay.
Slightly more longer legs.
But actually, John, I think it's essential for us here in New Zealand. We are a really small market. I've talked about Raw Dog Screaming Press here in New Zealand. Scholastic, for example, is a mid-range publisher here, and you guys are putting out more books and probably better quality books than Scholastic New Zealand is at the moment. I mean, obviously not the same market, but But in terms of what you're putting out, a small press in the United States represents a big press or a medium to big press here in New Zealand. The big presses have pretty much abandoned us. Hachette has a marketing division, and that's all it has.
And in particular for genre fiction.
For any kind of fiction. Random House Penguin pretty much only does non-fiction here.
Yeah.
We're really seeing withdrawal of all the big publishing houses. So we're really looking to having to move for genre fiction, having to move to Australia and New Zealand to look for publishers for our work.
Australia
and the United States.
The US or the UK.
And also we're finding that the funding opportunities are just drying up here in terms of getting Creative New Zealand support. So we're really having to build our community and bring it across the ocean to the readership, essentially. So, and Dan and I sort of feel strongly that you can't do that in a vacuum. You can't do that on your own. You need critical mass, which is why we've sort of reached out across the Tasman. I'm working with judging some Australian horror writers, their awards this year. We're looking at other networking type of opportunities, just so that we can sort of create some critical mass and move. It's one of the reasons that I came across to StokerCon and met with Jennifer last year, which was really exciting for us. We need you to know we're down here, and there's some absolutely fantastic talent.
And so we're currently making plans for making it StokerCon next year.
Yeah, it's definitely coming, but we're trying to get Dan across there as well, which would be marvelous.
Okay, nice. Yeah, we'll be there, so I'll get a chance to meet you. That'd be great.
Make sure he buys you a drink.
That's right.
Okay, it sounds good. Well, that's interesting. It's hard sometimes to get people here in the United States to come to the events in the United States. Meanwhile, you're coming, across an ocean. But it sounds like the situation there is quite different. And so that's a much more of a necessity for you, I think, at this point. I'm kind of surprised to hear the state of things with the publishing companies in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, there's only 4 million of us down here,
Mm.
and a lot more sheep, but only 4 million people. And of the books sold here, only 3% of all books are fiction, and that includes children's fiction. Okay, so we just, and I don't think that it's because New Zealanders don't want to read it. We're talking books sold in stores, print books, and it's not because New Zealanders don't want to read it. It's just they're not getting in our stores because the big publishers are not distributing them. So, so we need a readership, and we do have a readership. They're reading ebooks, but they're buying them offshore. So,
So when they sit down and try to work out the numbers of how many New Zealand writers are selling books in New Zealand, they're only looking at their model only applies to the book sales through the bookstores. Those models are not looking at what are New Zealand readers buying
through Amazon,
or through any of the
Okay.
So there's a very skewed idea of what the New Zealand readership is actually buying, when it's not, and also what that same model applies to what New Zealand writers are selling. So they look in the same places, and they don't look at what are New Zealand writers who are selling through Kindle, or what are they selling through small US. What are they selling? So the numbers come out with a very different picture from what is actually happening, which feeds back to the funding models to say, well, there's no market over here, so there's no point allocating any funding there. So the whole situation is a bit of a mess, and the end result of which is that people like Lee and myself, who like Paul Mannering, people like Helen Lowe, who have Paul and Helen, extremely talented writers, all their books are sold offshore. So Paul has about 3 different series, I think, that are published by Permuted Press.
Seven Press.
Okay.
Yeah.
Annie Schuster.
Yeah.
Helen's with Knots, isn't she? Random House.
Yeah, Random House. So we've got some names here who do extremely well with their books, but they don't get counted towards what New Zealand writers are selling or producing. So we don't count, essentially. Yeah. So essentially, how do you combat that except for bringing this to the attention of the people who are in a position to do something about it, and also leading from the front.
Yeah.
Yeah. By getting out there and doing it and saying, we're not just talking, we're actually doing these things, and here are the numbers.
Right.
The numbers basically mean plane tickets for us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I was talking to Jonathan Mabry and Jack Ketchum at DogCon5, and they're saying, look, we want to come down, we'd love to come down and do a convention with you guys, but can you find us the airfares? And it's essentially the same for us. We're the nobodies, but we still got to find the airfares to get across there. I think it's just essential. We just have to do it. We just have to do it. I'm off to Book Expo Australia next weekend. It's a 10,000 person book expo, basically just a book fair. Sydney. I'm with Cohesion Press with I recently was into the Mist, and so I'm going across there to basically promote the print book, which isn't even available in New Zealand. It's available in Australia and the United States, but it isn't available in bookstores in New Zealand. So that's just an idea of what we're up against.
Wow. Okay. Well, obviously what we need to be doing as a company now, hearing this, is investing in trying to get our stuff into the bookstores and libraries and what have you in New Zealand, and maybe we can re-import you to New Zealand from the United States.
But it's exactly how Nalini Singh and David Hare get their books back into New Zealand. They are published by Hachette, both of them. David has an Aotearoa series, doesn't he, which is basically involves Maori mythology. But they've sold their books offshore into Hachette. I think David's done it through Australia and Nalini's done it through the United States. And now their books come into New Zealand via Hachette International.
Yeah.
So
and interestingly, when you're having these conversations with the Book Council about what New Zealand writers are producing, they don't recognise those names.
No, they don't even know who Nalini Singh is. How many times the New York Times bestseller. Goodness knows how many times. I mean, it's a question of whether you read that stuff. But she's been very, very successful, and she's New Zealand's Julius Vogel Award-winning writer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and as you can see, we're a little bit stroppy about these things, and we do go to the book council, and we do stand up and talk at places that we should probably be a little quieter, but hey. So you probably picked the stroppiest couple of writers.
Well, that's and part of that, of course, there is a thing about writers, isn't it? That writers have a tendency to be very introverted and to be a bit reclusive and to want to do their thing and get the work out there. But it's not that often that you get a writer who will also stand up and make a lot of noise about something that they're very passionate about, because it's a whole different social appeal. And Lee and I don't mind getting up in front of people and talking about things. So.
Excellent. Okay. Well, hey, we like that. So that's perfect. Good attitude. Okay.
Beach house gatherings with beer. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
We did some research before we approached Jennifer, and I made it quite clear that we had read some things about the press and liked what we were hearing. So.
Well, hey, that's also good to know. Good all around. Okay, thank you. So, anything you'd like to say, maybe in closing, something that we can, hello again, look forward to in the future from you? I believe what we have with you is a series of books, a 2-book series thus far.
So far, yes. So, first book, Hounds of the Underworld, that's written. It's had a couple of editing passes at this point in time. We're writing the second book at the moment, so we're about 25,000 words into that. Nothing our way through. That's always fun.
Dan writes these explosions, and then my character has to work out how they play with that. It's like, and we're a couple of pantsers, really, and this is the problem because we often write off in tangents, and we
sort of roughly know where we're going. we sort of want to end up over there, but how are we going to get there?
It's the blind leading the blind. It's seriously it.
Yeah, and so we've got sketches for 3 to possibly 4 books in that series. All obviously depending on what happens by the end of the second one. The idea was that we would have a nice format of books where we've got the 2 voices. We've got one character who's sort of a bit dark and a little bit in the spirit world, and one character who's very firmly rooted in the scientific, and so they're constantly at odds, but having to come to a solution at the end of it. We thought that's a nice format that we can probably sustain for a few books with a bigger story arc. So that's where we're at the moment. Writing the second one, plans for the third.
We might do another anthology at some point.
We're tossing around, waiting for the right idea for an anthology to come up. We'd probably do it under a different sort of model from the way we've done them before. We've just taken submissions. We might think about maybe inviting writers. We've got a bit of some names to
generate a bit more interest.
To generate some interest on next time around. So we'll probably do something like that. Obviously, you've got another novel coming out after Into the Mist.
So we've got a lot on. And the next year's national convention.
That's right. So as far as community building goes as well, we're involved in that. So I'm on next year's NatCon. We organised the NatCon writers stream for this year as well.
That was a big job.
Which was a big job, and so we're helping organise next year's as well. I am, and then we're both on the committee for Speculative Fiction New Zealand, which is the writers' organisation for New Zealand science fiction fantasy writers. Nice. So we've got lots of that stuff that chews up our time as well. But in terms of projects, we've also just got projects on the way all the time. I've got some short stories coming out over the next 2 or 3 months.
Oh, who has time for short stories? Nice for something.
And a day job and a family.
Oh. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to say anything about the day job.
But that's what we've got. That's what we've got coming up in the next few months, and yeah, hopefully a little bit of meeting with people next year.
Yeah, we'd really like to meet some more of the stable. I've met one or two, but it'd be really fabulous to meet some more of these writers. And we've got to read a bit more actually, because we're a little bit down on. We've read a few, but not enough. So we're liking what we're seeing. We need to read a few more.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, looking forward to hopefully meeting you two next year at StokerCon. I want to encourage everyone who is out there on the internet watching this, definitely get to StokerCon. You're in for a special treat. We're going to have all sorts of events going on, and we have international guest authors obviously coming to join us. That will be great. And thank you so much for you taking the time out of your schedule. I know this must be pretty early in the morning for you.
No. 2:30 in the afternoon.
Oh, okay. Well.
We had lunch, and we thought we'd get into the mood, and so we're
okay.
Good.
Okay. Well, hey. Okay. Well, then I don't feel so bad. So again, thank you for joining us, and I want to thank everyone in the internet audience for staying with us and checking out our new authors joining the Frolic Screaming family. And I encourage everyone to tune in tomorrow for another publicity workshop from Beverly Banbury. And thank you, and good evening, or good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Okay, thanks again.
Bye, John.
Okay.